Good afternoon, I'm David Mencer, Israeli government spokesman. Today is the 25th of March 2024, day 171 of the October 7th war. 171 days on, our war aims remain the same. Firstly, to destroy Hamas. Secondly, to bring home the hostages. And thirdly, to ensure that Gaza never becomes a threat to us ever again. Simultaneously, we are providing humanitarian aid to achieve these goals. This will deliver a stinging blow to the Iran terror axis. I want to start today with an update on our casualties from this war. IDF fatalities since the start of the October 7th massacre have unfortunately risen to 596. That is up 2 since our last briefing. The people of Israel grieve with the families of Sergeant Major דיוויד Garfinkel, aged only 21, who fell this past Friday. He was from Sitria in central Israel. Garfinkel was part of the elite commandos Dovran unit, and he fell in the battle to eliminate a terrorist firing at a civilian minibus near the town of Dolev. The terrorist was killed. Sergeant Major Garfinkel is survived by his parents and his siblings. His friends wrote about him that he was a guide in the scout movement, a handsome boy, a wise and talented man with a great soul, the salt of the earth, they said about him. Staff Sergeant Lior Aviv was also aged 21 and from Rishon LeZion, and he fell on Saturday in the northern Gaza. Fighting Hamas, he leaves behind his parents as well and 3 siblings. His fellow comrades described him as an outstanding, moral and humble soldier. There are no words of mine that can assuage the pain of their parents and their families. We embrace them and those dear families who have lost their precious heroes, sons and daughters, in this war for our existence. The price of war is very heavy and painful. Each casualty is a world unto itself. May their memories be forever a blessing. Now an update from the north of Israel. Overnight, around 15 launches from Lebanon were fired towards an IDF post near Manara. 50 launches were fired into Israel on Sunday, on Purim. Overnight, IDF fighters struck a Hezbollah military compound with terrorists in Mais el-Jabal in southern Lebanon and Hezbollah in Baalbek. On Purim, in Jerusalem today and across the weekend, across Israel, Jews have been, and the world over, Jews have been celebrating Purim. It's not easy to celebrate at this time. Sirens went off in the north, sirens went off in the south. Indeed, sirens just went off in Ashdod for the first time in 2 months. Kids in costumes running for cover. You won't see pictures of it or reports of it in the news. Purim remembers another Persian tyrant trying to exterminate the Jews. His name was Haman. He failed. Purim had special significance this year because Hamas will also fail. Now an update from the IDF precise targeted operation to rid the Shifa hospital of terrorists. On the 7th day of this operation, we've been preventing harm to civilians, to patients, to medical teams and medical equipment. The tally so far is bewildering. 170 terrorists eliminated, 500 Hamas and Islamic Jihad terrorists apprehended, weapons hidden amongst medical equipment, patients and displaced civilians. So that's Hamas hiding behind the sick and injured, waging war from inside the Shifa hospital. Anyone heard any condemnation from the World Health Organization? How about the International Committee for the Red Cross? Or indeed any other UN body? Their silence is deafening. Elsewhere in Gaza, in El Amal, in western Khan Yunis, 20 terrorists were eliminated in close quarter combat and aerial strikes. Next, an update from COGAT, which coordinates and facilitates humanitarian aid entering Gaza. 103 humanitarian aid trucks went into Gaza yesterday after inspection. Only 28 were distributed by the UN aid agencies, 22 from the private sector. Food trucks went to northern Gaza Strip overnight. 24 aid trucks were transferred to Gaza via the Jordanian route. 88 packages, 1 ton each, of humanitarian aid were airdropped over northern Gaza yesterday. In addition, tankers of cooking gas and fuel have gone into Gaza. The usual 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. humanitarian pause took place today in Al-Shabura neighborhood in Rafah to allow the movement of humanitarian aid. These are the real figures. The UN quotes Hamas figures uncritically, the same Hamas that claims that Jews are descendants of pigs and monkeys. There is stable food supply in southern Gaza. Markets are bustling. Food stocks are piled high in the aid agency warehouses. In northern Gaza, our proactive measures are providing relief. Now, UNRWA went over 6 weeks without requesting a single aid convoy. Only over the past few days, they have made but 3 requests. You know, Hamas's objective is to create an image of humanitarian crisis. Where there is hunger in Gaza, it is hunger orchestrated by Hamas. These are the images they create. These are the images they want you to see. I can guarantee these 3 things. I've said them before. No one in Hamas is hungry. Number 2, Hamas and other criminal and terrorist gangs steal the aid. And number 3, Hamas wants to maximize the suffering of ordinary civilians. Why? To stop the war, to protect their own skins. Today and every day, by air, land and sea, aid is entering Gaza. And as for UNRWA, you know, many are working hard to keep Hamas in power and keep UNRWA relevant. Let me reiterate the Israeli position. UNRWA is a front for Hamas. UNRWA employees actively participated in the October 7th massacre. UNRWA employees took and held Israeli civilians hostage. The UNRWA HQ served as a literal cover for a Hamas server farm and intelligence base. UNRWA is not part of the solution. It is part of the problem. UNRWA is tainted with terrorism. Their primary goal is to perpetuate the Palestinian refugee problem. Their leaders disseminate libel, and therefore the organization needs to be dissolved. That brings us to the end of today's briefing. I will now take your questions in the chat. Please state your news outlet, and now I'll be happy to take your questions.
Thank you. The first question is from Jody Cohen at World is One News. Do you expect a compromise will be found on the ultra-Orthodox enlistment bill, or could this issue break up the coalition government and lead to early elections?
Thank you very much for your question, Jody. Of course, this is a long-standing issue here in Israel. I won't be commenting further on any of these issues. Needless to say, the country is united on the war aims to defeat Hamas, to ensure that they can never again pose a threat to Israel again, and of course, getting our hostages home. Those are the 3 war aims which have universal, almost universal, across Israel appeal and support. But as for that issue, I'm afraid you'll have to ask the politicians and the protagonists involved.
Thank you. There's another question now from David Clement of the News Forum. The head of UNRWA is accusing Israel of blocking aid in northern Gaza. Can the PMO confirm whether or not that is true?
I think I've made the Israeli position on UNRWA absolutely clear. UNRWA are a front for Hamas. I'll say this again. UNRWA are a front for Hamas. They are part of the problem. They perpetuate the conflict. They fill people's minds, unfortunately, in Gaza and also in Yehuda v'Shomron, the Judea and Samaria. They fill their minds with the idea that one day Palestinian refugees will be able to return to Jaffa and to Haifa. Nothing could be further from the truth. UNRWA are part of the problem, and we will now stop working with them. We are actively phasing out the use of UNRWA because they perpetuate the conflict rather than try and alleviate the conflict.
Thank you. There's another question from Joel Pollack of Breitbart News. Vice President Kamala Harris told ABC News yesterday that she has, and I quote, studied the maps, and that it is not possible to evacuate civilians from Rafah before the Israeli operation there. Is she correct on the maps?
First things first, we of course want to thank our American friends for the steadfast support they have provided us since the October 7th massacre, not least in providing those 2 aircraft carriers off our coasts to prevent the situation from widening elsewhere in the region, for providing us with the armaments we need to defend ourselves, and of course their support in the United Nations. We've made clear our opinion on Rafah. Hamas remaining in Rafah is not an option. It would be the same as if the Allies allowed Hitler and the Nazis to remain in Berlin. A defeat of Hamas in Rafah is absolutely crucial. They must be defeated comprehensively to be able to rebuild Gaza and to free Gaza from Hamas. The Prime Minister has made his and the War Cabinet, and I think there is entire support amongst Israel's people. We will not allow Hamas to remain in Rafah. We will not allow it. And of course, a key part of our plan is to move innocent civilians out of harm's way. We've done it before. You know, people are always telling Israelis it can't be done. People told David Ben-Gurion, you shouldn't declare a state in 1948, but he did it. You know, when you tell an Israeli, no, it can't be done, what he hears is, oh, right, so there's a chance then. So I want to be clear about this. If Hamas are in Rafah, we will defeat those 4 battalions in Rafah. They will be defeated. It is key to making sure that Hamas is not able to recoup its losses, to rebuild itself, and to retake Gaza. That is the way to rebuild Gaza.
Thank you. There's another related question now from Hannah Julian of the Jewish Press. She asks, France is threatening an embargo for weapons and munitions to Israel if the IDF enters Rafah. Can you comment on that?
Well, I think in my last answer I gave the Prime Minister and the War Cabinet and the entire Israeli population's view on leaving Hamas standing in Rafah. We will not allow it to happen. It is a key part of our war aims. Hamas remaining in Rafah is essentially us admitting to defeat, and that will not happen. You know, there's a reason why you don't see many Hamas spokespeople in the media. It's because every time they are interviewed, they say they would like to do the October the 7th massacre again and again and again. Hamas cannot be allowed to remain in Rafah. So our opinions on Rafah and the necessity of the action in Rafah are absolutely clear. Hamas must be defeated, including in Rafah. As for the French question, I think it'll be probably best if you ask the French what their intentions are.
Thank you. There's another question now from the Swedish News Bulletin. They're asking, there are unverified claims on Twitter from the Euro-Mediterranean Human Rights Monitor claiming that the IDF is using Palestinians as human shields. What is your response?
Another outrageous slur, together with the slur of sexual attacks against Palestinians, which have even been rolled back by Al Jazeera today. A phenomenal state of affairs. You know, if Al Jazeera roll back on this issue, saying that these accusations against Israel about using sexual abuse against Palestinians are untrue, then you can be pretty sure that what else of their reporting is untrue. You know, these sorts of libels against Israel are pure projection. It is Hamas that uses human shields. Just witness Hamas holding themselves up together with Islamic Jihad inside the Shifa hospital. What an appalling state of affairs to use a hospital, a refuge, a place where sick people go, a place where civilians go to seek refuge from Hamas, actually. it is Hamas and unfortunately Islamic Jihad that are using human shields, and no amount of projection can overlook that fact.
Thank you. There's a question now from Jim Williams of Zenger International News. And he asked, David, can you confirm that there is a hostage deal for a pause in the fighting on the table, but that Hamas continues to rebuff the offer?
I can confirm that, of course, getting our hostages out of Hamas's hands is a key part of Israel's war strategy. We must bring them home. The terrible plight of these 134 people, 35 of them who we already know have died, killed by Hamas, 19 women in an appalling situation. We know from people that have been released that these women are facing rape, unfortunately, on a daily basis. We know that there's a lack of oxygen, a lack of sunlight, a lack of food. These appalling crimes against humanity are being undertaken by Hamas against these poor, innocent civilians. We will bring them home. By whichever way, we will bring them home. It is a key objective of Israel in this war. Now, as for the state of the negotiations, you will understand that people's lives hang in the balance on these negotiations. So I won't be discussing where they are exactly. But what I will say is that these negotiations need for all sides to make an extra effort. Israel has already shown. It has already shown that it has made an extra effort. We need our partners, all of the people around the table, to make that extra effort to do what needs to be done to get those hostages out of that murderous rapist army's hands as soon as possible.
Thank you. Final question, follow-up question actually from Jim Williams. He says, the Biden administration, particularly the Defense Department, has said that there is some disagreement with the tactics between the U.S. and Israel on what to do in Rafah, but the U.S. will stand by Israel in whatever it decides on how to proceed in Rafah. Can you comment?
Look, I think for 5 months we have been absolutely shoulder to shoulder in this battle of Hamas. And even today, while there are disagreements, we all agree, the US and Israel, we agree of the need to rid Gaza of Hamas. And we will get there. As for different tactics in terms of getting rid of Hamas from Rafah, Israel has made clear that a Hamas that remains in power in Rafah, that these 4 or 5 battalions inside Rafah remaining standing, this is essentially a defeat for Israel. And we will not have come this far to allow Hamas to keep standing. Absolutely not. It will be the equivalent of the Allies saying in 1945 that we will defeat the Nazis in Europe, but we will not enter Berlin. We will not go for Hitler himself. It would absolutely defeat the object, because Hamas could regroup, reform, and attack us again, and we will not have that. Gaza needs to be liberated from Hamas.
Thank you. There are no further questions.
Thank you very much. Please stay safe, and the next briefing will be tomorrow at the same time. Thank you.